Hello, everyone. Welcome to our, what is this now, our fourth or fifth? I think this is our fifth session, yeah? All right, then. So, unlike last time we completed our math section. Um, and I wanted to just say that, well, first, congratulations to us. We completed the math section. And second of all, it's not the be all end all. You're going to need far more preparation than that for the math section in order to do well in the exam. But I hope I provided a good overview. Next, instead, we are going to move on to writing, which is something I actually particularly enjoy. In fact, I'm an editor for my father's company. And honestly, I find the writing section more fun than the math section. So we're going to get started on that. So let me pull the slideshow up. Okay, so a little introduction to the writing section for the ACT. So for the ACT's writing section, you're gonna have 75 questions and you're gonna need to do them in 45 minutes. Yeah, that's a really brutal question to time ratio. You're gonna need to be really fast on the writing section for sure, but it's not that bad because most of these questions are extremely simple. They're the kind of questions that you look at most of them for like 5, 10 seconds, and you'll have known the answer. So yeah, it's not as bad as you think. Nothing like math. And the question types for the writing exam are pretty simple, actually. There's only two. We're going to be able to dive straight into learning really quickly. So the two types of questions are idea expression questions, where you have to try and make the passage sound better or change the passage in order to put forth some kind of meaning. Typically, with these questions, you're not fixing a grammatical mistake and the sentence is actually grammatically correct, but you're going to try selecting an answer or a word that best fits the sentence. And the other type of question, that's going to be your standard grammar, English convention type question, where you're just fixing grammar mistakes, like how to use punctuation, how certain sentences are structured, and things like that. Before I move on, I want to point out that, okay, the way that the exam is structured, if you look on the right side of the screen, is that, okay, we have a passage on the left side typically, and questions on the right side. And the passage is going to have these numbers embedded in it. And those numbers correspond to questions on the right side, and where the question is related to a word that is underlined near that number. So, for example, for question number two, they have the number two over here indicating it's for number two, and they have the word swear underlined. And then you see four option choices here where the first one says no change and the other three are different words. This question is basically asking you which word should you put in place of the word swear, or is swear a good enough word or the best word in this case? And then, they might get a little bit more complicated. Take question three, for example, which has an entire portion underlined and it's asking something really big, like the writer is considering deleting this portion. Should they keep it or should they not? And you'll have more complex answers that way. So yeah, what I said about the ACT before, which is that most of the questions will be relatively simple, that is still correct, but those simple questions will be balanced out with a couple of questions that will make you think a little bit longer. So it's actually a part of the exam that comes down pretty close. Most of you are not going to have that much extra time at all, or some of you might be right down to the wire or not answer all the questions by the time time is up. But yeah, let's move on. Okay. So, just so you know, we're just going to go straight into it, into learning. The first thing we are going to discuss is modifier placement, and this is a sort of big picture question that is not a grammar question, and I think it's a good place to start with learning writing. So, okay, let's read this sentence. After hearing a lineup of famous art critics testify to the aesthetic value and originality of non-representational art like Bird in Space, the court's ruling was in favor of Brancusi. Okay, I just want to say I know for a fact that this sentence did not make a single bit of sense to you guys, but that's okay. You don't need to always know the full context of a sentence in order to answer the question. So in that case, this is a type of grammar question, sort of. So modifier placement, the way the question is structured or the sentence is structured is that we have our modifier, which is a phrase or word that is describing a noun, and this phrase will come before this noun is mentioned. And the thing about modifiers is that the nouns need to come immediately after the modifier so that the reader knows that the descriptor is applied to the noun. What I mean by that is, if we take a look at the sentence again, I'll give a little bit of context so that I can help you guys. In the passage that the sentence is taken from, there is a court case going on where a bunch of critics are examining a piece of abstract art from this artist named Brancusi so that they can determine whether or not his art is considered real art. So let me get my pointer on. But okay, is this the pointer? Huh, I swear Zoom had a pointer, but I don't know how to use it, so you know it's okay. But okay. So the art critics, they are hearing a lineup. There's a lineup of famous art critics, or no, sorry, there's a court hearing a lineup of famous art critics, and they are testifying to this abstract piece of art called Bird in Space. And the descriptor is that the court is hearing something, right? You know, after hearing a lineup of famous artists, this is an example of a modifier because it is something that is describing a noun. An example of this in another sentence would be something like, after smelling the chicken, the dog ran down to the kitchen. In this case, the phrase after smelling the chicken, that is describing the noun, right? And the thing is, when you have a modifier, the noun should be mentioned ASAP, or it should be the first thing mentioned after it. Or at least what I mean is, I don't mean literally the noun should be the first noun mentioned, but it should be the first noun that has like possession. It sounds all complicated, it's not that complicated. I'll ask this. This is the first noun. This is the subject of the sentence, okay? Noun, subject, they can be interchanged in this case. The court's ruling is the subject in this case. So I have a question. After hearing, okay, a court's ruling is something intangible, right? Intangible. It cannot hear things. It's a construct, right? So can a ruling hear something? No, that doesn't make sense. A ruling is like something that is written or something that is decided, right? Something that is living will hear something, right? So I'll show you which answer is the correct answer. A is definitely not the correct answer because a ruling cannot hear something. B, the ruling of the court, this is the next subject in option B. Basically the same thing as A, not correct. A ruling of a court cannot hear something. C, the court. In this case, the court consists of people, right? And that is the subject of the sentence. We're talking about a court that is hearing a bunch of testifications to this piece of art. And a court full of people can hear something, right? So that makes sense. So C is a good option. We'll put a marker there. D, Brancusi was the favorable receiver of the court's ruling. Okay, this is a little bit of a problem now because we have Brancusi. Brancusi is the name of the artist who is in court, and he is a person. He can also hear something, right? So which one is it? Is it C or is it D? Well, in the context of the whole sentence, Brancusi is the defendant. He is the one being persecuted, and the court is the one making the decision, right? So, who is hearing the lineup and making the decision? Who is hearing the testifications and making the decision? The court is the one making the decision, right? So C is going to be the correct answer. this seems a lot more complicated than it really is. It comes down to intuition and basically thinking, okay, if there is something being done and the noun is doing something, what is the correct noun to use? All right, it seems we have some questions. Savanjana, do you have a question? Unfortunately, we cannot hear you. I'm noticing there's been a lot more audio issues. Please test your audio before you come to class. Benish, you have a question?
Yeah, I do. Like, yeah, you mentioned like step by step, the modifier, the phrase or word that is describing a noun. That means, so in this context, like in this example, like what's the modifier?
Yeah.
Is the modifier ruled? Like, I'm just asking again. Sorry.
No, no, no. The modifier is after hearing a lineup of famous art critics, because the modifier is a phrase that is describing a noun, and saying that a verb is doing something is a type of description, right? Like saying this noun did something, that's a type of description. So in this case, the court is the one hearing something. So hearing is the modifier and the court is the noun.
Okay, makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. I know I can hear it in your voice. Maybe it didn't make clear sense, but it'll come with practice, which we will do right now. Oh, whoops. Okay, here's some practice. Customary for ACT timings, I'm going to give you guys 1 minute to do this starting now. All right, everybody, 1 minute is up, so let's come back and answer these questions. Also, if you asked a question and raised your hand, please make sure to put your hand down. But okay, yeah. So, okay, where were we? Okay, so the first question. Okay, what is the modifier? Okay, happy that the long winter was over. John's coats. Okay, John's coats is the subject in this case, and what is describing John's coats? This is the describer or the modifier. Happy that the long winter was over. That's the modifier describing how this noun is happy that the long winter was finally over. Now, can a coat be happy that a winter was over? No, because a coat is not alive. So it inherently doesn't make sense. A is the wrong answer. So now we have to think, what can be happy? A living thing can be happy, right? So it's kind of obvious that John himself is supposed to be the correct noun. So which option has that as the noun? B, basically the same thing without a comma. So B is also wrong. C, happy that the long winter was over. John's closet. Okay, John's closet, that is not alive. So C is going to be the wrong answer. D, happy that the long winter is over. John placed his clothes in the closet. All right, that's going to be the correct answer. Now, okay, next question. Having difficulty swallowing, vitamin C are a supplement children don't usually take. Okay, so having difficulty swallowing, and then we have a noun, vitamin C over here. We're trying to say vitamin C is something that children don't usually eat, but can vitamin C have some difficulty swallowing? No, because vitamin C is a vitamin, not a living thing that can swallow. So it's kind of obvious that children is the correct noun we're supposed to use. We have to find a children that makes, sorry, we have to find an option that makes it so that children is the first noun or subject used. So A is going to be wrong, obviously. B, because they have difficulty swallowing, children don't usually take vitamin C supplements. Okay, that is a great answer. But let's check the other ones. Having difficulty swallowing, supplement. Okay, yeah, that's an unalive thing, so C is going to be wrong. D, because they have difficulty swallowing vitamin C supplements, yeah, D is not right. B is going to be the correct answer. Also, if you're wondering why I'm being more slow with answering these questions, it's because oftentimes in writing, you'll come across an option that is okay, and you'll put that option down, but then you'll miss out on an option that is better than that. So it's good to go through most of the options in this case. Avanish, you have a question?
Yeah, actually, in the first question, like the word finally,
Yeah.
like the word finally is just there in A and B. It's not there in C and D, and the D is the right answer. Like why is finally missing?
Finally is missing for no particular reason. Um, it could be this is sometimes a trick that they'll use to throw you off. A common trick that a lot of kids use nowadays is where if they notice an option that is significantly different, they'll choose that option thinking it's the right answer. And sometimes they'll just make small vocab changes in order to throw you off like that. Like, see how you paid attention to the finally, and you thought that there was something, amiss going on. Well, in reality, finally, it has no effect on the sentence at all. Like, you can write the sentence perfectly fine without finally, right? So yeah, it's just a little small something. There's no reason for finally to be in or out. That's just how it is.
Okay, so that means the answers don't need to be like exactly to the
No,
expected
they
grammar.
never need to be exactly. They never need to be
It should make the
exactly
same
the
sense. Yeah.
same.
So you
Yeah,
mean to say that it
and
has to
also
make the
yeah,
same sense. Thank you.
yeah, exactly. And a little bit of clarification. All those sentences are grammatically correct. It's just that D is the correct answer. It's not a grammar thing. It's just like a style thing. Okay. Next type of question, another sort of big idea question, but this is less grammar focused. Okay, setting up ideas. So this is the type of question where, let's look at question 3. Which phrase most effectively sets up the examples in the second part of the sentence? So a thing that you need to do in this type of question is you need to look at the examples provided and you need to think of what are they trying to prove or what are they trying to say, because a good setup will lead into trying to prove that, or it will serve as a sort of mini introduction to that conclusion. I'll give an example. I'll show you right now. So sentence 3, or the sentence that question 3 corresponds to, starts as, regrettably, electronic medical records require infrastructure that can be expensive to build. So, they don't require physical storage space, they don't need to be photocopied and collated, and they are less likely to be physically misplaced. More importantly, electronic records accelerate communication between different and various healthcare providers, allowing for more efficient patient treatment. Okay, so, through all the examples shown, what are they trying to prove? All the examples are relatively positive. They seem to be propping up medical records, saying that they're good, which is why it's a little bit confusing, right? That the default statement is saying something like, regrettably, electronic medical records require infrastructure that is expensive. Throughout this whole second part, did you see anything talking about how expensive medical records were? No, they're only talking about all the advantages and good parts about medical records. So this isn't a good introduction because it's not talking about what the examples are trying to prove, and the topic that it is talking about is nowhere to be found in the second part. So we need to change the introduction. B, electronic health records provide many advantages over paper ones. This is a great answer. It's talking about electronic health records. It's talking about how they have many advantages over paper ones. And that's what the examples are basically doing. Now, okay, we should check the other answers. So, C, researchers have weighed the benefits and drawbacks of electronic health records. Okay, this answer is okay, but it's not as good as B because this one is saying there's both good things and there's also bad things. But in the paragraph, they're only talking about good things. So the C is not going to be right because it's trying to do a 50-50. We only want 100 positive. D, typically electronic health records need a full-time staff to maintain them. Regardless of whether or not this is true, it's not a good introduction because the topic of requiring a full-time staff to maintain them, first of all, that statement can be seen as a little bit negative because it's sort of saying, oh, this system needs a whole lot of maintenance. Oh boy. And also, in the paragraph, they're not talking about staff or maintenance at all. If you were to use an introduction like that, then the topics you would be talking about would be related to staff and how difficult it would be to maintain, right? So yeah, it's going to be wrong, and B is going to be the correct answer. Nish, you have a question?
Yeah, again, I do have a question. The thing is, the question is like, which phrase most effectively sets up examples in the second part of the sentence? When they say the second part of the sentence, do they mean they don't require physical storage space? They don't need to be photocopied and collated? Does it mean that one? Because like, if B is being the right answer, like B talks about electronic health records provide many advantages over the paper ones. Like, I don't find that to be the right answer if the underlined one is only the right answer? Even
But
for
the
adding one.
underlined answer is not the right answer because basically what they're saying here is that everything here is what the sentence is trying to say. When it comes to writing, we're not talking about whether or not something is factually correct. We're talking about what the author's intent is or what the author is trying to say. The author doesn't care whether or not something is correct. I mean, they obviously should, but that's not their main goal. Their main goal is to try to prove something or to try to change your mind. So, which introduction best leads into talking about things that can change your mind? And A is going to be wrong because that introduction makes it seem like electronic medical records have a disadvantage, but then the following examples are trying to prove how medical records are great. So the introduction is not supporting the information that is coming after it. And B is a better answer because B is positive nature and saying that they have many advantages best supports or sets up the examples in the second part.
Oh, okay. So it means like the one in the square box, like sort of like a box, is part of the
Yeah.
is part of question three, but it wasn't underlined.
Oh, yeah, yeah. It wasn't underlined. It says which phrase most effectively sets up the examples in the second part of the sentence. When it says second part of the sentence, you should have read the whole entire sentence after that because that's important to the question. That's why reading questions
Yeah,
is important.
yeah. I
Okay,
was
yeah,
like
no
really
worries.
confused. Thank you.
Oh, okay, no problem. Okay, so let's try and answer these two questions. As usual, I'll give 1 minute starting now. All right, everybody, 1 minute is up. So let's come back and check out these two questions. Okay, so once again, these are obviously setup questions. So let's read the sentence. This movement, called the Great Migration, would transform urban America and recast the social and political order of the country as a whole. In particular, Detroit, Chicago, and other Midwestern industrial cities experienced significant demographic changes. Okay, just to break down the sentence and make it easier for you guys to understand, we have this thing happening called the Great Migration, and it is something that changed America. And this underlined portion is supposed to be like a detail explaining how the Great Migration changed America. And what are the examples and information that is being set up, that is being displayed after the underlined portion? In particular, Detroit, Chicago, and other Midwestern industrial cities experienced significant changes. Okay, so those are examples. So the first option, social and political order of the country as a whole, saying that the Great Migration changed everything, that's an okay answer. Not necessarily, wrong. Maybe it's a bit general, too general for my taste, but it could be an okay answer. But what about B? The social and political order of every city it touched. This is also a really good answer because it's saying how the Great Migration changed every city it touched, and the examples are specifically cities, right? This one is just straight up saying all other Midwestern industrial cities. It's not referring to the entire of America. It's only talking about the cities or the examples. Thing about examples is that when you're trying to set up information, it's best that your setup is as specific as it can be so that it's more connected to the examples that you're providing. B is actually a better option than A, and A is not a bad answer. Keep that in mind. A is an okay answer, but B is going to be the correct answer because B is more specific towards the examples. C, that's going to be wrong because we're not talking about interactions or people. D, we're not talking about everyday life. So yeah, D is going to be incorrect. Okay, the next question. Born in Pittsburgh in 1928, Andy Warhol explained that the soup had personal significance to him as a consumer because I used to drink it. Okay, so this introduction over here, excuse me, To be honest, it seems kind of redundant because what does being born in Pittsburgh have anything to do with Andy Warhol and explaining soup? So A already doesn't feel like a good answer. What about B? A leading figure in the American pop art movement, Andy Warhol. Okay, B is not the worst answer because it is describing Andy Warhol and, he's the subject of the sentence. But then it goes on to say that Andy Warhol explained that the soup had personal significance to him as a consumer. Now it's talking about soup. So how does knowing that he is a leading figure best set up the example or information after that? So although B is an okay answer, I think we can find a better one. C, when asked why he chose to paint cans of Campbell's soup, okay, yeah, C is going to be the best answer because it says when asked why he chose to paint cans of Campbell's soup, the soup is connected to the rest of the sentence, and the he, why he chose to paint cans, well, but he is connected to Andy Warhol, and it's also talking about how he chose to paint cans, which sets up the information explaining why Andy Warhol did something. And also, a little bonus thing, the sentence says Andy Warhol explained that the soup had personal significance to him. What is the soup? If you used the other options, by the way, D is also obviously wrong because it's only talking about Andy Warhol and not the suit. The other options are going to be incorrect because when you have something like the soup is a pronoun in this case, and pronouns are used to replace nouns. Like saying a noun would be a person like Andy, and then a pronoun would be his, for example. So the soup is a pronoun, but a pronoun needs a noun to exist. And C is the only one that provides a noun that can be used as a reference for what the heck the soup is. Puneet, do you have a question?
It was in the last slide. I just wanted you to quickly go to the last slide
Oh, okay. So you can what?
so I can just copy down the note. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I didn't hear you. Could you say that again?
So I can just copy down the notes like at the bottom.
Okay. I'll keep it on there for like 5 seconds, but in the future, we will not be able to stop as per students require.
Thank you.
No problem. Okay. Strong support. So, okay, this question, yeah, okay. So the question is, which choice gives a second reason and additional support for the main idea of the paragraph? So two things to keep watch. It's saying main idea of the paragraph. And when it says main idea of the paragraph, obviously the first thing you need to do is look at the paragraph that the sentence is talking about. So question 31, where is that? Okay, it's over there. So we need to find the main idea of the paragraph. I think a good idea would be to check this whole paragraph. Okay, let's read this paragraph. Upon viewing the stunning statue, guild members discarded the plan to hoist the statue to an exterior buttress. It was far too beautiful and was unlike other Renaissance depictions of David. Okay, this is a statue of David, I guess, to be placed high above its viewers. After meeting with city officials and prominent citizens, the members agreed that the statue should instead stand outside Florence's town hall as a symbol and representation of the city's strength. Okay, so what is the main idea of the paragraph? The main idea of the paragraph is there's this event happening, and we have a bunch of guild members who are changing their minds about something. So okay, okay, I do recognize that that might not be extremely obvious what the main idea is. The good part, however, is that it doesn't need to be. You only need to know the context of the paragraph. So you should think, if I was the author, what part of the sentence would I replace this with? Would I keep this or do the other ones make more sense? So let's think about it. The guild members, they threw away their plan to put the statue high up because for two reasons. One, it was far too beautiful, and second, which is in parentheses, which is also the question underlined part, and was unlike other Renaissance depictions of David. Okay, that is the second reason provided, and it's not the worst reason to not hoist something up there, but does it really make sense? Like, just because something is different, you should treat it differently? I mean, I guess, but let's check out the other options. B, and depicted a favorite biblical story of the city's citizens of Florence. Okay, so we're choosing not to hoist something up because it depicts a biblical story. What does that have to do with why you're not hoisting it up? That doesn't really make that much sense to me. So B is going to be wrong. C, and later would come to symbolize Florence's defense of its civil liberties. Okay, two things are wrong with this answer. First of all, it is wrong. One, what the heck does Florence's defense of civil liberties have to do with why people don't want it high up? And two, it says later would come to symbolize something. We're not talking about later. We're talking about now. Why do the guild members not want to have this up here? Okay, what about D? And at more than 8 tons, far too heavy. So if we put D in the sentence, it would be it was far too beautiful. And at more than 8 tons, far too heavy. Okay, I would say D is the best answer because it makes sense simply because, statue is really heavy. You don't want to put it up there. I mean, don't see anything wrong with that. The other ones, they're either just outright don't make sense or they're not very. I mean, the option A would work sort of, but it's just not the best answer. Let's move on to the next one. I'm going to give you guys a minute and 30 seconds to do this starting now. Also, if you have a question, please tell it to me in chat if I'm not able to get to you at the moment. All right, everybody, a minute and a half is over, or I should say 2 minutes because I just delayed a little bit. But anyway, let's get back to these questions. Okay, so which part of the sentence makes the most sense to replace the underlined portion with? So a sentence saying, we think of invertebrates as little things, but this is misguided. It's as if we formed our view of vertebrates based on only fish without ever considering birds. Okay, and then the second part says the largest invertebrate on Earth can be really big. So what is the point of this sentence? The point of this sentence is saying that we normally think of invertebrates like this, but that is silly because invertebrates can also be like this. So what is the difference that she's trying to show? Well, obviously, the difference, or not obviously, but the contrast he's trying to show is that we think of invertebrates as small things, but they can be large, they can be big things like 60 feet long. So the comparison that we should make with vertebrates is a small vertebrate with a big vertebrate. And a fish, while small, is not that different from a bird. So I don't think A is really a good answer. B, cats that are ever considering dogs. As much as we like to joke that cats and dogs are opposites, that is not like true in any logical way, and that doesn't make sense. C, on mice without ever considering elephants. So mice are pretty small, and elephants are really big. So that sets up the differentiation between small and big. So C is the right answer. D, on humans without ever considering other animals. So we're comparing humans to other animals. Yeah, no, that's not really a good answer because what's even the difference? Like maybe it would work if the sentence is talking about like intelligence or cognitive function, but yeah, that's just not working in terms of size. So yeah, C is going to be the correct answer. Now the next one. Dali was mainly known as a painter, but he made frequent forays into other artistic mediums and enjoyed collaborating with other artists. Okay, what is the main idea? The sentence, the main idea is saying Dali was mainly known as this, but he also did this and he liked working with other people. So which idea best supports that main idea of Dali does this, but he's also different? B. Many of the bizarre images Dali painted, like the melting clocks in his works. Okay, so right off the bat, I'll say it's talking about Dali's painting. And it's true, it could be true, but it's not a good answer because the main idea of the paragraph is saying that he does different things and works with other people. Why are we going back to talking about his painting? That's not the main idea in this paragraph or these two sentences. Okay, see, but it was Dali's dramatic flair and style as much as his artwork that made him so well known. Okay, this sentence is talking about how Dali is famous and well known and relevant, but that's not what the main idea of the previous sentence is about, right? So C is not going to be a good answer either. What about A? We forgot to mention A. In 1945, Dali designed a dream sequence for the film Spellbound, excuse me, by the famous Hollywood director Alfred Hitchcock. So, excuse me, I would actually say this is a good answer because it's talking about Dali designing a dream sequence for a film, which is an art form that is not art painting, and it's talking about how he worked with a director named Alfred Hitchcock. So it's connecting to how Dali connects to other artistic mediums and how he enjoyed collaborating with other artists. So A is an awesome answer. D, this one talks about how many popular artists like Jeff Koons and Damien Hirst point to Dali as a central influence on their work. So you might think, oh, it's talking about other people, right? So, it's an okay answer. But D is actually not a good answer because D is just stating how other people were inspired by Dali, where in this case, we're trying to say how Dali works with other people. These two artists that they mentioned, they're not working with Dali, they're only inspired by him. And also, D fails to mention Dali's not painting endeavors or stuff like that. So, yeah, D is just going to be wrong. There was a better way I could have said that. I know, I'm sorry. But yeah, A is going to be the correct answer. We have a question. Ria, you have
Yeah.
something you like to say?
So for the first question, I was a bit confused because it said that we tend to think of invertebrates and the largest invertebrate, but what the second sentence it says our view of vertebrates. So I was confused.
Oh, okay. No. In the second sentence, they're purposefully separating from the topic of invertebrates. Think about it. They're saying we tend to think of invertebrates as small things. The second sentence is saying this is wrong. That is the same thing. So it's saying this is as misguided as if we formed our view. That's the same thing as saying this is wrong. It's as if we thought of vertebrates based only on fish without ever considering birds. What the author is doing is she's trying to take a topic that not many people know about, and then she's going to compare it to something that people do know about a lot about, which is vertebrate. And she's saying how it's wrong to think of invertebrates as small things because it's the same thing as thinking of vertebrates based only on small animals like mice without ever thinking about big vertebrates like elephants. So, 1 second. I hope that made a little bit more sense.
I mean, I kind of got that, but then with that same logic, what shouldn't it be like? I think D would make sense to me too because um, it says we formed our view and on vertebrates, and when I think of vertebrates, I think of human mostly because that's just what we learn the most about, what most people know the most about.
Yeah, but
And
that's not what the main idea is at all. We're not talking about the difference between vertebrates and invertebrates. We're talking about how animals have a varying range of sizes and how people normally think of invertebrates as tiny things. And the author is trying to say that's dumb because imagine if we thought of, no, I'm not saying you're dumb. I'm just saying what the author is saying. I'm saying the author is saying this is wrong because it's the same thing of thinking as vertebrates based on fish like based on small things without ever considering big things. And yeah, humans might be the first thing you think of when you think of vertebrates, but you have to think of the relationship between the two nouns that they're comparing. Like we need a small vertebrate and we need a big vertebrate, and mice are small and elephants are big, and that kind of is the best option for portraying how she's explaining how it's like silly to think that way.
Okay, I got it. Thank you so much.
Okay, no problem. Yeah. All right. So yeah, let's come back. Okay. Relevant information. Okay, yeah, this one's definitely going to take a while. Apologies for the bad resolution on this one. Okay, the writer is considering adding the following sentence. So this is like a big picture type question where they're saying the writer wants to add something. Should the writer add it? This can be up for interpretation sometimes, but there's unfortunately only one correct answer, so you better interpret right. Okay, so where is 23 located? 23 is located here, but there's nothing underlined, which actually makes sense because the writer is saying, should we add this portion over here? So a good idea would be to read everything else, or at least read the surrounding sentences. You don't have to read the entire paragraph. At minimum, read the surrounding sentences. All right, so let's read it. All my life, the sculptor Konstantin Brancusi remarked, I have been seeking to capture the essence of flight. Bird in Space is a work of abstract art. It is not a readily recognizable representation of the bird in its title, but rather a polished arc of bronze that calls to mind the animal's graceful airborne motion. Okay, so the first thing you should do actually with this type of question is not think about it personally, but think about it based on the answers. Immediately go to reading the answers, because the problem here, remember how I said this can be interpreted in different ways? The problem is that if you interpret it in a way and you're sure about your way of thinking, you might actually pick the wrong answer because you're going to select the answer that matches your way of thinking, and you're not going to select the answer that the test maker marked as correct or what the test maker thought as the most illogical. Don't worry, you're usually going to be on the same line of thinking with the test maker, but regardless, you should still read the options first. So, what is the first option? Yeah, we should put this sentence here because it helps explain why the US government would eventually recognize Bird in Space as a work of art. Okay, what is the sentence in the first place? More than any of Brancusi's other works, the 1926 sculpture Bird in Space manages to achieve that aim. Okay, this sentence is, what is the sentence doing? It's maybe introducing Bird in Space, saying, oh, this is one of Brancusi's works, and it achieves Brancusi's goal. And why is A is saying we should put this sentence here because it explains why the US government would recognize it as a work of art. Okay, I mean, maybe, I guess you could say that. Just because something achieves a goal does not necessarily mean that other people will see it that way. So it's a little bit overconfident to say that just because something did something means everyone else would recognize it, like the US government. So A is not a bad answer, but I think it could be better. Would that be yes, because it provides an effective transition between the presentation of Brancusi's goal and the discussion of Bird in Space. This is a pretty great answer because it's right. It provides effective transition between presenting the goal. The goal is he wants to capture the essence of flight, and then if you like place that sentence in there and read it that way, it actually flows really well because it goes from Konstantin Brancusi talking about he wants to do this, and then the sentence is saying more than any of his other works, this thing did that, and then it starts talking about the artwork in particular. So B is definitely a very, very good answer. C, what about this? No, because it prevents information about Bird in Space that is repeated later in the paragraph. Okay, so I'll just say it outright. This is wrong. If you read the rest of the paragraph, it doesn't really talk about how bird in space was perceived. And yeah, no, it just doesn't make sense. D, no, because it interrupts the explanation of the nature of abstract art. Okay, first of all, it's not really interrupting anything. If anything, it's probably making it flow better. And D, the nature of abstract art. When did we start talking about the nature of abstract art? We're talking about Brancusi. That's what we're focused on. We're talking about Bird of Space. That's what we're focused on. And Bird of Space is an abstract art, a piece of art, but we're not talking about the nature of abstract art necessarily. So D is not going to be the correct answer. Therefore, B is going to be the correct answer. I can already imagine this one got. Oh, okay. Seems we don't have any questions, which I'm a little bit surprised about, but okay. All right, here's some practice. I know this one's a bit long, so I'll give you guys, what, 2 minutes to do this starting now. All right, everybody, 2 minutes are up. Let's come back and check out these questions. Okay, first paragraph, we're talking about the moon. Okay, popular theory of how the moon formed is that a large object struck the Earth and the crust was sent into space. And we have findings that reveal that the moon is mainly made of silicate materials and low in iron. The lack of iron on the moon as compared with Earth suggests that it was formed from the outer crust of the Earth, which contains much less iron than its core. Okay, you know, that's a pretty logical flowing paragraph. Now, what sentence does they want to add? Evidence to support this theory comes from studies of rock samples recovered from the moon. Okay, so you could say maybe it's like a sort of introduction to the second part, but which answer is correct? So, like I said, we should check the answers before we make a conclusion. A, yes, because it clarifies the connection between mineral composition and the theory of the moon's formation. Okay, this sounds a little bit complicated, but it's not. A is going to be a decent answer because it says that it clarifies the connection between mineral composition and moon formation. And this sentence is talking about studies of rock samples, and that is a mineral formation, right? And it's clarifying how that theory, or the theory of the moon once being a part of Earth, is clarified by mineral composition. So A is not a bad answer. B, yes, because it reinforces a claim that the writer makes earlier in the paragraph. Okay, a claim, what claim does the author make? The claim is that you could say that the claim is this material eventually cooled and formed the moon, and evidence to support this theory, that sentence would kind of be supporting it, but it's not that strong, so I'll say B is an okay answer as well. That's gonna be a problem because now we have to decide between 2 yeses. Okay, what about C and D? No, because it blurs the paragraph's focus by introducing information that isn't clearly explained. Um, if you look at C, that doesn't inherently make that much sense because there isn't that much information being introduced in that sentence, and also the information that there is relatively clear. There's nothing really confusing or vague about that sentence, so C just doesn't feel like a good answer. D, doesn't give enough detail about the kinds of rock samples that were studied. Yeah, it does. It tells us that there's rock samples recovered from the moon. I mean, I really don't know how much more detailed you could go with that, at least in the purpose of this paragraph. All right, so now we have to choose between A and B. Okay, in this case, I'm going to choose A. B is not a bad answer, but it says it reinforces a claim that the writer makes. Now, think about it. Did the writer really make a claim? The writer is just saying that there is a popular theory. The writer isn't claiming or stating something is true. So A is going to be the correct answer. All right, the next question, we're talking about animals who live in the Everglades and how there's periods of floods and droughts and how some species rely on them. Okay. And then the bolded sentence they want to put in there is conservation efforts have helped revitalize the Florida panther population. And then the second part talks about how the wet seasons and flood seasons are helpful for birds, and the dry seasons are also helpful for birds who eat fish. Okay, so I'm personally going to say right off the bat that we shouldn't put this sentence in, and you'll see why. Okay, what about option A? Yes, because it supports the paragraph's argument with an important detail. What is the paragraph's argument? The paragraph's argument is that the Everglades periods of flood and drought are important, and we know this because they're giving several examples of why having floods and droughts is a good thing. What the heck does Florida panther populations have to do with the Everglades? That sentence. Oh, conservation efforts. That is adding literally nothing to the argument. So A is going to be wrong. B, yes, because it identifies the characteristics that makes particular animals worthy of study. First of all, we're not identifying any characteristics of the Florida panther. We didn't describe the panther in any way. And also, who cares if we're talking about characteristics of particular animals being worthy of study? We're not talking about what makes an animal worth studying. We're only talking about how a biological process is necessary, and we're trying to provide examples for that. So B is going to be wrong. C, no, because it undermines the main claim of the paragraph. Yeah, no, this is going to be wrong because although it's like a random sentence thrown in there, the main claim of the paragraph is not being undermined by it. Undermine means that it is degrading the main claim or it is working against the main claim. An example of that would be maybe a sentence saying how there is an animal that is being hurt by these periods of flood and drought. That is going against the main claim that Everglades need changing flood and drought periods. So yeah, what about D? It's not directly related to the main point of the paragraph. Yeah, this is going to be the correct answer because I mean, just looking at that sentence just makes me mad. Like we're talking about, oh, Everglades. Okay, oh, look at all this important information about how, so many different animal species need like flood and drought to survive, and then we talk about, oh yeah, we also have efforts that revitalize the Florida panther population. Wait, what? Why is that even there? Sorry if I got a little bit heated there. That question just irritates me. But yeah, okay. Now we have a quiz. I'm gonna give you guys 2 minutes and 30 seconds to do this, starting now. All right, everybody. 2.5 minutes are up. Let's come back and check out these questions. All right, so the first question, what kind of question is this? This is a modifier question. And they're asking us to replace the underlined section with something. So, okay, what is the modifier in this case? I would acknowledge initially it doesn't seem like there's anything wrong with the sentence, but if you notice that a sentence starts with a verb or it starts describing something, and then it leads into a noun with a comma, that is a modifier noun relationship. So the modifier, having returned from the ocean to the stream where it was born. It is a pronoun and it is this thing is returning from the ocean. What is returning from the ocean? Well, I don't have to tell you. It's obviously the salmon, right? The salmon is returning from the ocean. But then what is the noun that is immediately after that? An adult salmon's life cycle. Okay, a life cycle is an intangible thing. It does not return, it cannot move. So, yeah, A is not going to be right because we have the wrong noun at first. B, an adult salmon. Okay, that's the first noun used here, and it works. We're talking about the salmon, right? So B is going to be a great answer. C, the spawning and death of an adult salmon. The spawning and death of an adult salmon is going to be the noun. It's a really long noun, but it's still a noun. And death cannot return from the ocean because death and spawning are intangible things as well. So C is going to be wrong. D, the life cycle, yep, same thing as A. So yeah, B is going to be the correct answer. Now the question below that, this is, okay, which choice adds the most relevant supporting information to the paragraph? So you're required to read this paragraph and you have to be quick about reading it since you don't have much time. But yeah, if you read it, which I hope you did, this paragraph is talking about a cartoonist and how the cartoonist was important in ending the tyranny or ending the control that a man named Tweed had over a bunch of people. So question 19, when you have a question corresponding to a word in a sentence, it might be a good idea to read the rest of the sentence so that you can get a better context. The sentence it's in is, one of the artist's most famous images showed Tweed with a bag of money in place of his head. By itself, that's a pretty good sentence, but the options are saying, how can we amplify this? Okay, A, like many other Nast cartoons, that one was published in Harper's Weekly. Okay, how does the fact that the cartoon was published in Harper Weekly contribute to the main idea of the paragraph that Nast or this cartoonist was important in the downfall? I mean, you could say like maybe it's kind of related, but it just doesn't really add much. So A is an okay answer, but not a good, great answer. B, Nast would later illustrate Tweed's escape from prison. Okay, so this is kind of a better answer because it's adding how Nast further did this task of exposing this greedy fellow, but that second part, it's not really related to anything else in the paragraph. We're not talking about Nast doing something in the future or stuff like that. So B is still an okay answer. C, one depiction that omits Tweed's signature hat. This is definitely wrong because what does the hat have to do with anything? It's not important at all. D, head, an image that perfectly captured Tweed's greedy nature. D is actually a great answer because it further elaborates on how Nast went about drawing his cartoons, and it explained the meaning behind Nast's cartoons as well. So D is actually going to be the correct answer because it's simply the best answer. All right, the next question, which choice effectively sets up the information that follows? Okay, so the information that follows 37, what is that? A 1994 survey concluded that only 18% of American colleges required a philosophy course. And the sentence after that says, between 1992 and 1996, more than 400 independent philosophy departments were eliminated from institutions. Oh, wow, that's a whole lot of not philosophy happening. So 37, we have to put an introduction there. A, consequently, philosophy students have been receiving an increasing number of job offers. Okay, the following examples after 37's position in the text are negative. A is a relatively positive introduction, and that is not what we want. So A is going to be wrong. B, therefore, because in evidence, colleges increase their offerings in philosophy. That is just straight up wrong because we clearly have examples or information being provided that disprove that. C, notwithstanding the attractiveness of this course of study, students have resisted majoring in philosophy. Okay, this is an okay answer because it is a negative introduction saying how students are not really majoring in philosophy. It's not exactly directly related to the college aspect the examples are talking about, but it's okay. It's many utilitarian benefits. College have not always supported the study of philosophy. So this introduction is saying colleges don't support philosophy, and that is going to make this the best answer because yeah, it's a negative choice, and it sets up talking about colleges, simply. Also, just so you guys know, I received a warning that my connection is unstable, so I will turn off my video so that the audio is clear. All right, next question. So the writer is considering adding the following sentence. Fossils provide paleontologists with a convenient way of estimating the age of the rock in which the fossils are found. Should they add this there? All right, let's read the rest of that paragraph. Paleontologists are using modern technology to understand the distant past. With the aid of CT scanning and 3D printing, researchers are able to create accurate models of prehistoric fossils. And then the sentences after that talk about those 3D models and how they expanded knowledge and how they advanced the field of paleontology, sounding pretty futuristic right there. Okay, should the writer add this here? A, yes, because it supports the paragraph's argument with the important detail. What is the argument of this paragraph? Well, this isn't a full paragraph, but we could say maybe that the paragraph is positive towards modern technology. And overall, you could say that the main idea is modern technology is helping paleontology. How does talking about fossils help with that main idea? We're not talking about modern technology. We're not talking about anything supporting the main argument. So A is not going to be a good answer. Okay, but all right, B. Because it provides a logical transition from the preceding sentence. Okay. Um, Not really, because we go from talking about 3D models and 3D printing to talking about how fossils are helpful, and then we had to go back to talking about fossil models. If you put the sentence in there, it's actually disruptive because if you read the paragraph by itself without the sentence, it actually flows better because the sentence after one uses a pronoun. It says these models, and the sentence before that says, with the help of CT scanning, researchers create accurate models of prehistoric fossils. So these models is referring to the prehistoric fossils that were stated before. If we throw a sentence in there, it's disrupting that flow. C, no, because it is not directly related to the main point of the paragraph. And then we have D, no, because it undermines the main claim. D is not going to be right because the main claim is not being undermined. C is going to be the correct answer because, yeah, talking about how fossils are helpful is not supporting the main idea, or it's not related to the main idea of how modern technology is helping paleontology or the field of paleontology. Okay, so it seems we have a question. VJ, you have a question?
Yeah, so for number 19, you said the answer was D. Why is it not B? Because if you read like further into the passage, it talks about like his criminal activities.
Okay. So yeah, B is not a bad answer, and I wouldn't fault you for putting that as the answer, but you could also say the same thing for D because D is explaining how the image captures Tweed's greedy nature and how it's showing that Tweed is a bad person. And the this part over here, these cartoons are effective because many of the citizens who supported Tweed were illiterate and could not read the newspaper about his criminal activities. If you use option D, then it makes sense because option D is explaining how the cartoons are effective in changing the mind of citizens because most of those citizens couldn't read, and D explains how NAST is choosing images that show these illiterate people how Tweed is a bad person. Hopefully that made a little bit of sense. I understand why you chose B, but the thing is that just because there is a relation or a connection, that does not mean it is correct. If you keep on going for like sort of like pointer words where you're like, oh, there's something similar over there, there's something similar over here, therefore it has to be correct. No, you're not going to get far with that line of thinking because you need to think deeper about the logic and underlying sort of things going on. Okay, 1 second, just gotta take a water break. All right, I'm back. Okay, sentence placement. This is a pretty different question. So this is the type of question where if you notice the paragraph has these extra numbers placed in front of each sentence, 1, 2, 3. They're numbering the sentence in progressive order, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And the question 7 asks, where should we put sentence 2 to make the paragraph logical? So they're asking, yeah, basically, how should we change this paragraph up? Let's read sentence 2. Okay, but now 3D scale models can be rearranged with ease, which is a huge boon to scientists. Okay, that didn't make that much sense at first glance. Why don't we read the rest of the paragraph? One significant benefit of 3D printing technology is its ability to create scale reproductions of fossils. Let's skip 2 for now. A team led by Drexel University professor Kenneth Culvera is making models of dinosaur bones 1/10 the bone's original sizes in order to learn how they fit together when the animals were alive. In the past, such research was limited by the weight and bulk of the fossils as well as its preciousness and fragility. In many cases, scientists had to rearrange bones virtually using artists' renderings. Okay, so the general flow of this paragraph is we're talking about 3D printing, and we then lead into talking about this team making a bunch of models. And then sentence 4 and 5 talk about how before it was hard to do this, but then before it was hard to do this, and they start explaining why it was hard. So where should we put sentence 2? Well, first of all, I definitely don't think it's A because it feels kind of awkward placed there because sentence 1 is saying a significant benefit of 3D printing technology is its ability to recreate scale productions. And then 2 is talking about how these models can be rearranged with ease. However, the word but over here is sort of a strange transition because the word but is used when the previous sentence is sort of contradicting what the sentence is saying afterwards. So it definitely fits in weird there. What if we put it before sentence 1? Uh, I mean, that could work, I guess. You know, you talk about how 3D scale models can be rearranged with ease, and then you talk about the benefits of 3D printing technology. It could be a little bit awkward though, because why are we talking about 3D printing technology after we talk about 3D scale models? Shouldn't we go from 3D printing to talking about how models are created by 3D printing? So B is not the best answer. What about C after sentence 4? In the past, such research was limited by the weight and bulk of the fossils as well as its preciousness and fragility. If we put 2 there, we'll say that and then go to, but now 3D scale models can be rearranged with ease, which is a huge boon to scientists. B is a great answer and better than B because we're going from talking about how research used to not be that good because of how uh, fragile fossils were, and then we're saying, but now we have 3D models that can be rearranged with ease. So C makes a good amount of sense. But then what about D after sentence 5? D is also a really good answer because the thing is, sentence 5 is actually supporting sentence 4 because sentence 4 is talking about how research was difficult. Then sentence 5 is talking about how during that time they had to do different things or they had to do less optimal practices like doing virtual rearrangements. So 5 is supporting 4 and basically 4 and 5 can be kind of treated like one unit. And if we put 2 after 5, we won't break the connection that 4 and 5 have. So D is actually going to be the best answer. Yep, that situation is going to happen a lot in writing where you'll get a good answer, but then there's another answer that is going to be even better. This is why I said read every single answer in the writing section because you never know if you might find a better answer than the one you currently have. Okay, here is some practice. Yeah, since you have to read a whole paragraph, I'll give you guys 2 minutes to do the stirring now. All right, everybody. So 2 minutes are up. Let's come back and check out this question. All right. So I'm not gonna lie, this one can be interpreted multiple ways. So let's take sentence 3. In the consideration of his writing, the details of that stressful experience have largely overshadowed the importance of his return to society. Okay. So after sentence 1, so sentence 1 talks about how Russian novelist Fyodor, I'm not even gonna try pronouncing that, Fyodor spent 9 years as a political prisoner in Siberia. And then 3 says, in the consideration of his writing, the details of that stressful experience have largely overshadowed the importance of his return to society. Okay, so A would actually make a decent amount of sense because sentence 3 talks about that stressful experience, and you could easily say, oh, that stressful experience must correspond to him being a political prisoner for 9 years. So A is not a bad answer. What about B after sentence 4? Sentence 4 is, he also founded a new political journal, a courageous move for a man whose similar actions had led to his imprisonment. Okay, if we put sentence 3 there, where we talk about how he founded a political journal and how this was courageous because similar actions led to his imprisonment, B is also a good option as well because option 3 is talking about in consideration of his writing, and that writing connects to, let me use a different color. That part of the sentence connects to how he founded a new political journal and the details of that stressful experience, although it is mentioned in sentence 1, it's also mentioned in sentence 4, where it talks about his imprisonment. And then what about sentence 5? Such experiences would help form the basis of his most famous novels. Okay, so there's another good part here. You could, for sentence 5, for option C, saying after sentence 5, this is going to be incorrect because if you tried putting it after sentence 5, what is that stressful experience referring to? Is it referring to him writing his novels? That's an issue because sentence 5 isn't talking about anything that the author, the Russian novelist Fyodor went through. And also, D is going to be D is going to be kind of incorrect as well, although it could be a decent answer because it says in consideration of writing the details of that stressful experience have largely overshadowed the importance of his return to society. The return to society, well, where it is currently after sentence 2 talks about him returning to society, and yeah, it could work, but then we are talking there's a part of sentence 3 where it's talking about the details of the stressful experience. Where is that referred in sentence 2? It's not really referred to in sentence 2. So D is not going to be actually a great answer. Overall, B is going to be the correct answer because it connects to the political journal when it's sentence 3 is talking about writing, and it's also referring to the imprisonment. And also, if you notice, if you put sentence 3 in between 4 and 5, the ending of 3 flows nicely into 5, where, like, if you read it, the details of the stressful experience have largely overshadowed the importance of his return to society. Such experiences would help. So they're continue to talk about experiences. So B is actually going to be the correct answer. All right, let's continue on. Yes, transition words. This is something that I, as an editor, have to do a lot of work on. Okay, so question 39 is asking what should we replace the underlined portion with? And the sentence for 39 isn't grammatically incorrect, but we need to choose the word that best fits the sentence. So, with transition words, there are two main types. There are cause effect ones and there are contrast ones. Cause and effect ones are the types of transition words where something happens and then the next sentence describes the result of the previous sentence. So you could say, this happened, therefore being a cause effect one, therefore this happened next. And then the next type of transition word is contrast transition words, where the previous sentence states something, and then the sentence after that, where the transition word is being used, has contradicting information. Where you say, maybe I'm trying to think. Uh, it's kind of crazy, contrast transition words are used all the time in life, but it's hard to think of an example on the spot. Okay, people thought this was true, but this is actually true. Something contradicting right there. And then there's other types that are important to know, such as continuations, where they're not necessarily the same thing as cause and effect ones. Continuations are transition words for adding information, and yeah, they're pretty useful. We also have conclusion type transition words, which obviously are used for conclusions. And we also have comparative ones, where you are comparing two events or you're comparing two actions. These will come naturally to you as you use them continuously. But yeah, back to 39. With a transition word question, if you don't know what to do, if you're not sure, it's always a good idea to read the surrounding sentences. So, okay, let's read the previous sentence. It's our job to be seamless, we noted. Okay, that didn't tell us much. Why don't we read the sentence before that? In determining how working time and responsibilities are divided, steps were taken by Levine and Rocco to ensure that the arrangement provided fluidity and consistency for the employees whom they jointly managed. And then the sentence for 39 is, they each plan to work 3 days a week with the overlap on Wednesdays. I also plan to talk on the phone each evening to discuss the day's work. Okay, so the way that the relationship between the previous sentence and the next sentence is that, or maybe I shouldn't say the next sentence because this is sort of like added detail. I should say like this part over here is that, okay, we have these two employees and they want to have an arrangement that is fluid and consistent for everyone who they are managing. And then the sentence after that talks about what that plan actually is and how they are going to do this. So, what is 39? Okay, option A, nevertheless. So, nevertheless is an interesting transition word. Nevertheless is sort of used as a transition word. If I'm correct, it's used as a transition for when you want to ignore the previous information. An example would be this person's father told him to do something. Nevertheless, he did it anyway. So, nevertheless is used to explain how something is happening and it is disregarding the previous information that would have maybe prevented that from happening. So yeah, A definitely doesn't make that much sense. So we're gonna cross that one out because we don't want to ignore the previous information. They're two very interconnected pieces. Oh, am I not being heard right now? I got a message that I'm not being heard, but uh, I seem to have my audio on, so okay. Okay, it just seems to be maybe a tech issue, but okay, no, my buds are connected. Okay, anyway, let's continue on. Okay, what about B? To this end. Well, let's first look at the other ones. C, however, okay, however is used when there is a sentence. It's used when there is also a contradicting relationship between the two sentences. The best way I can explain is you could say something like, this normally happens. However, this happens in special situations where however is used when you're taking like something that is general and then you're like saying how there's an exception to a rule or something. That there's no exceptions happening here, so C doesn't make sense. D. Similarly, we're not comparing anything, so D does not make sense. B is going to be the correct answer because the transition phrase, yes, transition words, transition phrases, they are both interchangeable. To this end is not a common transition phrase, but what it means is it's used in a relationship where the previous sentence states a goal and the second sentence states how that goal is being achieved. Where I'll give an example. In the first sentence, the goal is being described, and then B says, "To this end, this is being done to achieve that goal." And B makes perfect sense because that's exactly what's happening here. The previous sentence is describing a goal. The next sentence, where the transition word is being used, is describing how that goal is being achieved. Okay, so yeah, let's move on to some practice. Okay, I'll give you guys 2 minutes to do the starting now. All right, everybody, 2 minutes are up, or I should say more than 2 minutes because I had to leave for something. But yeah, let's come back and check out these questions. Okay, first sentence. Reforestation efforts, while undeniably valuable, often result in forests with limited biodiversity. However, care should be taken to plant a wide variety of native flora in depleted woodlands. Okay, when deciding what transition word to use, you need to look at the relationship between the previous sentence and the current sentence. So the previous sentence is saying reforestation efforts are valuable, but they have a bad aspect to them. The second sentence is saying we should do this to eliminate that bad aspect. We should plant a wide variety of flora in these woodlands. Okay, so basically the relationship is saying we have a problem, and then okay, we can fix this problem, or we should fix the problem as a result. So option A, however, that's not going to be a good answer because there's no contrasting relationship here. B, accordingly. Accordingly is used to further an action or to say, because of this, we should do this. You know, an example, I can't think of an example off the head, but accordingly would be a great answer here because if you read it out, it's saying, okay, reforestation efforts often result in forest limited biodiversity. Accordingly, so accordingly can kind of mean with keeping this in mind, accordingly can mean like keeping the previous information in mind, we should do this. So accordingly can be used in this sort of problem solving situation. C, nevertheless. That's not going to be a good answer because we don't want to disregard the previous information. D, furthermore. Furthermore is used to when you want to add extra details or add extra information, but we're not adding any extra information in the second sentence. If we were to use furthermore, the second sentence would need to be going into more detail about the issues surrounding reforestation efforts and limited biodiversity. So D is going to be wrong. And B is going to be correct. All right, next one, a little bit long. The Gordie Howe hat trick is an unofficial feat in which a hockey player scores a goal, records an assist, and gets in a fight all in the same game. Okay, the Gordie hat trick, yeah, unofficial feat is named after hockey great Gordie Howe. Despite this fact, Howe only achieved 2 such games in his professional career, far fewer than many other players. Okay, I'll say right off the bat, A sounds pretty good because the relationship between these two sentences, the first sentence is explaining the Gordie Howe hat trick and how it is named after Gordie Howe. Second sentence is saying Gordie Howe didn't actually have many games that where he performed this feat, which was named after him, which can sort of be like a contradictory statement saying, "Oh, look at this thing named after this guy." Well, it turns out this guy didn't actually do that thing a whole lot often. And A, it does that pretty well because saying despite this fact, that is actually sort of similar to B, where it's sort of the opposite intention, however, where B is saying, keeping this in mind, where, sorry, for the first question, accordingly is saying keeping this in mind, whereas for the second question, despite this fact, it's used in a situation where you're acknowledging the previous information, but you're getting ready to say something that is contradicting that information. Okay, B. What about B? As such is a cause effect, or maybe you could say a continuation transition word where you're saying this happened, as such, this happened. And it's not going to be a good option because as such is only used for logical event transitions where it makes sense to go from this event to this event. It doesn't make sense initially, or it's contradictory, right? To go from how this was named after this guy, turns out this guy didn't actually do it that a whole lot of times. So yeah, B is wrong. C, afterwards. This is a really awkward transition words because afterwards is like a chronological transition word, well, used for timings, and it just doesn't make sense to put it in a non-fictional text here where there's no like event progression necessarily. What about D? As a result. As a result is saying because this happened after that. Yeah, no, that doesn't make sense here because we're not trying to say that Gordie Howe had few hat tricks because it was named after him. So yeah, overall, A is going to be the best option. Doesn't seem like we have any questions, so we will move on. Okay, transition sentences. This is another big picture one. Okay, let's read this paragraph. Deer mice are noted for their. Wait, 1 second. All right. And as I was saying, deer mice are noted for their dramatic population increase after forest fires. There are fewer obvious food sources in severely burned areas, and fires often remove all vegetation, giving mice no place to hide and increasing their risk of predation. Okay, so the first bit is basically saying forest fires aren't helping mice, right? And then what about the second part? The underlying portion says deer mouse predators include owls, snakes, and various members of the weasel family. It's not that bad of a transition because it's still related to the previous part, right? Where it's talking about how they're higher risk of predation. You know, maybe it's helpful to mention what those predators are. However, what does the second part talk about? Because severe fires burn oh wait, yeah. Okay, because severe fires burn the topsoil layer, mice are able to access previously unexposed parts of the seed bank. Furthermore, although lack of vegetation cover greatly increases hunting success of owls preying on deer mice, this effect is likely counterbalanced by a decrease in predators in burned areas. Okay, so it's actually different. This part is saying that forest fires help mice. So, okay, we got a unique situation here. Now, the best transition sentence is one that goes from one idea to the next idea. So the first idea is forest fires aren't helping mice. The second idea is forest fires are helping mice. So we need a transition sentence that acknowledges the first part, but then moves on to the second part. The first part is not really doing that. Think of it like this. This part is like the ooh, if forest fires aren't helping, whereas the second part is saying forest fires are helping. So we have like red and orange there. The transition sentence needs to be an orange color. Sorry, I misspoke before. The two different parts are like red and yellow. The transition sentence needs to be orange. And however, this option A, I would say, is too red because option A is only talking about how forest fires aren't helping mice. What about option B? Okay, while deer mice are largely herbivorous, they also feed on arthropods like spiders and caterpillars. This is not a good option because what does deer mice have that's not related to the sentence in any way? Why are we going all of a sudden from talking about, how forest fires aren't helping mice to talking about what a deer mice eats? It's not related to the topic at hand. So B just doesn't make sense. C, since deer mice usually nest high up in hollow trees, fires also tend to destroy their preferred habitats. Once again, this is too red. This is only talking about the bad aspects of forest fires. So we need to find orange. All right, D. But despite these apparent disadvantages, oh, okay, we have this red portion here where it's acknowledging the bad parts of forest fires. However, then it goes into it's actually possible that fires improve conditions for deer mice. So we go from, yeah, we acknowledge that this is bad. However, there can also be good things. This is a perfect transition sentence. It has in what I like to say, a red part and a yellow part, and red and yellow mixed to a perfect orange. So yeah, this is a little bit of an unconventional explanation, but I hope it made it a little bit more like fun or able to visualize things better. So I have some practice here for you and just to see. Yeah, okay. I'll give you guys 1 minute to do this starting now. All right, everybody, 1 minute is up. So let's come back and check out this question. Okay, so what they're asking us for a transition from the previous paragraph to the second paragraph. So what is the first paragraph about? The first paragraph is about a situation where there is a historical movie and how there is a conflict over whether or not the movie is historically accurate. Okay. And then the sentence ends by talking about the historical consultant defending the script. Okay, and then the second paragraph talks about how historical accuracy is important in films, or at least why. It's talking about how historical films are important and how historical consultants are also important because they say, okay, read this. How they present the past is how it gets remembered. They're talking about the movies, saying the way that the movie is shot is how the audience is going to remember history. And then the next sentence says historical consultants must assure that they take this responsibility seriously, and historical consultants will continue to preserve historical intricacies. Okay, so option A, it asks, why then is historical accuracy important in films? So this is not a bad transition sentence because we go from talking about a situation about historical accuracy to talking about the importance of historical accuracy in films. And 20 is asking, why is it important? So we're kind of going from a why is it important? And then the second paragraph is explaining why historical accuracy is important. So A is a good option. B, what about directors who are less concerned about historical accuracy? Well, we're not talking about directors who are less concerned about historical accuracy, so B doesn't make any sense. D, consequently, do movies that take place in very recent past require historical consultants? That's not the topic of the second paragraph at all. We're not talking about movies that take place recently, so C is wrong. If you notice a pattern, basically the question just boils down to, is the transition sentence talking about the current paragraph and acknowledging the previous paragraph? D, what sources should filmmakers consult to ensure historical accuracy in their films? This is a question, but it's not really a good question because we already kind of answered that question. They should turn to historical consultants. And the second paragraph is not discussing multiple ways of multiple methods of historical accuracy. So D is wrong. A is going to be the best answer. I acknowledge that A might seem a little bit confusing and might not immediately seem like the correct answer right away. And I could probably make a better transition than that even, but A is going to be the best answer. Therefore, it is the correct answer. So we also have writing introductions. Okay, writing introductions. This is a question where, yeah, you have to write an introduction. And what is the purpose of an introduction? An introduction is supposed to, well, introduce the topic. We're supposed to, it's sort of like one of those setup questions, setting up ideas. We need to ask, what is the paragraph about? All right. Both Julie Levine and Julie Rocco desired a healthier work-life balance, but they were hesitant to give up their managerial roles overseeing the production of new vehicles. In order to retain these top engineers, the company proposed a creative solution. Okay, option A. The 21st century has presented both unique challenges and innovative solutions to work-related issues. This is not a bad answer because it's talking about current day workers and it's talking about innovative solutions. This is the most important part. And the innovative solutions part of that sentence connects to the creative solution that is proposed later on. So A is not a bad answer. B, companies are searching for ways to recruit the best employees. We're not talking about recruitment, so B doesn't make any sense. What about D? According to the national survey, the average full-time US employee works about 1,700 hours per year. Although we are talking about a healthier work-life balance and we are talking about work hours, this sort of introduction, it kind of makes me think that if this were the introduction, we would be talking about, US employee work culture as a whole and not talking about something small like just these two workers. Similar issue with A actually. A is a really broad introduction, talking about something massive. What about C? C is actually the correct answer because it is compact, it focuses on introducing the following information and is overall strongly related to the paragraph. In 2007, two highly successful full-time engineers at a US car company faced the same dilemma. So, okay, we talk about two engineers, Julie Levine and Julie Rocco, and we talk about how they face the same dilemma. And the next sentence explains their dilemma. So C makes the most sense. All right, here is some practice. I'm going to give you 1 minute to do this starting now. It's a lot simpler than you think, trust me. Nirdesh, you have a question?
Yeah, we didn't do the second question for the last slide.
The second question is not related to the current topic. All right, everybody. All right, this is going to be our last question for the day. And yeah, let's come back and check out this question. Okay, what is this paragraph about? Okay, so researchers are talking about empathetic mimicry. We're talking about how people will copy facial expressions, body language, and behaviors, and how doing that can cause those emotions to associated with those behaviors to come outwards in the person mimicking them. Excuse me. And we end with, in other words, if someone else smiles, then we are likely to smile in response, and the act of smiling can make us happy. So we are basically talking about how people's feelings can evoke those same feelings in us. So option A, is happiness contagious? How can happiness be contagious? This is a great introduction because we're talking about happiness and we're talking about how can happiness be contagious. And the whole paragraph is basically talking about how feelings can transfer from one person to another, which is being contagious, right? So A is a great answer. B, is it impolite to copy the behavior of those around us? B is going to be wrong. Well, first of all, thank you, B, for being like a party pooper. That's a really like depressing answer. Also, we're not talking about being impolite or we're not talking about manners. That's not what the paragraph is about. C, can research reliably identify what makes people happy? All right, first of all, we're not talking about exactly what makes people happy. Second of all, we're not talking about whether or not research can do something. We're using research, but we're not talking about researchers' capabilities. So C is wrong. D, can people lie with their facial expressions? We're not talking about lies. This is easy. D is wrong. A is going to be the correct answer. All right. Well, would you look at the time? It is 9 o'clock. So I will be ending today's session right there. Once again, thank you all for coming. If you have any questions, you can stay back and ask them. I will have to leave a little bit quickly. So yeah, you'll have to be quick with that. But yeah, for now, goodbye and have a great day.